Um, so as you know, we have three questions that we've asked all our forum participants, candidates, and I'll begin with the first one of those. Uh, you've said a little bit about this. Perhaps you can say more. What motivated you to run? What sets you apart from the other progressive grassroots candidates for this race?
Yes, so this campaign is born out of lived experience. I'm a person who's experienced a lot of gun violence growing up on the South Side. I know what it feels like to watch people suffer. My mom suffered with maternal health care. That's the reason I'm an only child, not because she didn't want other children, but because she kept having miscarriages, three in a row. And her doctor literally told her, "You need to stop trying because you're going to kill yourself." But she didn't give up. And so that's the genesis of my life and my fight. That fourth time she was successful, but that was the only, I was the only child that she was able to have. But she didn't have access to maternal health care, which is why I've spent my life fighting on behalf of marginalized people. Why I got in this race particularly is because I moved to Wisconsin, temporarily relocated to Wisconsin, sorry, during the last election cycle for president because I wanted to stop Donald Trump from getting reelected. And so I uprooted my life. I packed my dog up. We moved down to Milwaukee. I was there from Madison, Racine County, and we were bringing hundreds of people from the state of Illinois for Operation Swing State to try to turn Wisconsin blue. We successfully increased the voter turnout in Milwaukee County specifically to 89%. That is the highest in the nation. Chicago has never gotten that high. And we had a really targeted operation. But the problem was people split their ticket. They voted Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin, and they either left President blank or they voted for President Trump. And it frustrated me because every Friday I would have these check-in calls with the Democratic Party of Wisconsin and the Harris campaign, and I would say, "Hey, my people are going to the doors and they're not getting good reports. We need to change our messaging. We need to speak to working people. We need to make sure that we're talking to them and not at them." And I felt ignored in that moment. And when we lost, it frustrated me. I was depressed. I was angry. And I decided I was going to turn that anger into something positive, hence this campaign. What sets me apart? I have a long track record of success. I'm also a coalition builder, very proud to be a Congressional Progressive Caucus endorsed candidate. If you are a champion of Medicare for All, as I am, the chief sponsor of Medicare for All has supported this campaign. We have four or five congressional endorsements in the state of Illinois and across the United States, seven different labor unions, 40 elected officials, faith leaders. We are building the largest and broadest coalition that this district has ever seen. And the point is to have a diverse coalition that comes together to really push this district into the digital age and move forward in a better way. What sets me apart also is that I don't have support from one part of the district. I have support from as far south as Jeanette Taylor, Weston, Lakeisha Collins, and Proviso, and the entire village of Maywood board and mayor. And, I can go on and on about the number of people who are supporting this campaign. We have over 2,000 grassroots donors, and we have just cleared over 500 volunteers. So we are heavy on the doors, talking to our neighbors. And there's no other campaign that can do that. I'll launch a canvas of 150 people this Saturday, and it is truly a rainbow coalition. It is black, brown, white, Asian, Latino, you name it, queer, straight, it doesn't matter. We are bringing everybody together to push this district forward in a better direction. And I believe we are the only progressive campaign that has the infrastructure and what it takes to beat two APAC funded candidates who have millions of dollars to spend. We have the people power to counter that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just real
Um,
quick, Marianne, I just want to jump in. I forgot to say it. We are recording this and we're live streaming it to YouTube.
I got you.
So
As a candidate, I assume everything is recorded. So,
well, it
awesome.
is for other people too, right? In case they want to turn their camera on, they should know. Thank you though, Anthony.
um, okay, second question of the standard ones. As you know, and we're not telling you anything you don't know, the seventh district contains some of the widest wealth and health disparities in the country, from the Gold Coast to West Garfield Park. How does your platform specifically bridge that gap? And what are a few day one federal priorities you believe that would have the most immediate impact for that seventh
Yeah.
district?
So the wealth gap is unacceptable in the seventh district, but not only the wealth gap, the life expectancy gap. We need a candidate who can speak to the entirety of the district. That's why it's important that you have experience in every level of government. That's why it's important that you have support throughout the district and that you can really reach voters where they are. One specific policy proposal that I think we can get done within the first year is to get the federal government to fund more block grants to remove lead service lines in the city of Chicago and broader Cook County. Chicago has over 400,000 lead service lines. At the rate we are removing lead service lines right now, we will reach 2042 before we are finished. I don't need to remind you all that there's no acceptable amount of lead in the water to drink. There's no acceptable amount. And it really messes with your cognitive ability. If the federal government funded block grants to Chicago to remove those lead service lines, you work with a coalition of state and local legislators to ensure that they hire people from impacted communities and they get into good union trade apprenticeship programs. And so now you're firing on all cylinders. The federal government is footing the bill. You're cleaning up the air and the water, so it's environmental justice. Those same kids who would have been justice involved now have good jobs and they are participating in union apprenticeship programs to remove them. It's environmental justice, it's worker justice, it's helping lower our crime rate. It'll help to get those youth who would have been otherwise, potentially in the criminal justice system. Those are now people who are going to be homeowners. They're going to repopulate the South and the West Sides. Those are also people who are going to stimulate our economy. That's one policy proposal that we can push through right now that would likely get bipartisan support that could really make a difference. And it hits every single part of the district because when crime goes down, when the air and the water is cleaner, property values go up, we're getting people back to work. The people in the downtown area are thriving because there's more people to shop at their businesses. We are creating a circular economy that works for everyone. But it's going to take more than one congressperson. It takes a coalition, and it's going to take all 14 Democrats who are in the Illinois delegation to push in one direction. That's something all of us should be able to unite around. And it will lower our life expectancy gap, and it will also help with wealth inequality.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think I have lead in my water. I need to test it. Um, so you've already talked a little bit how you would deliver these priorities. You think it would be a bipartisan or many partisan collaboration. Specifically, who's going to be in that coalition? I mean, as you said, all the senators from Illinois. I mean, all the congresspeople from Illinois,
Yeah.
which includes a couple red ones.
You said a couple
A few,
references.
yeah. Republican
So for our
representatives.
campaign, you have the Sunrise Movement that have endorsed the Sierra Club, different state legislators. But once the seat, so right now we have a coalition of about 43 elected officials plus organized labor, plus different community leaders and faith leaders. That's on the campaign side. Once the seat is won, you have to work with a council of mayors. You should have a council of faith leaders. This is the way that I currently lead now as president of the commission. I make sure that when we do a superintendent search that's going to impact everybody in the city, we do focus groups with faith leaders, community leaders, labor leaders, right? We go out and knock on doors. I am the type of candidate that believes that March 18th is infinitely more important than March 17th because March 18th is the day that the real work begins. And I'll be knocking on doors and sending you emails, but instead of asking you for your vote and your support, I'll be asking, how can I serve you? That's what it's going to take. We need someone who's going to work. Only about 32% of this district votes. I am the type of person who wants to go get that other 68. I want to know what happened. Why did you tune out? Why are you not interested in democracy anymore? What made you give up? And how can I get you back involved in this process? There has to be some issue that you care about that I can use as a catalyst to help bring you back into this electoral system that even sometimes I myself doubt, but we need you. And so that's the type of leader I'll be. I'll put people at the forefront. I will put leaders at the forefront. I do not believe that I am the smartest person in this room or any room, and I do not have the answers. One thing I am extremely clear on, though, the people have the answers. You all are the experts in your community. It's my job to facilitate that. It's my job to ask, how can I serve you? How can I help you? And I believe that's what it'll take to get the job done.
Here. I'm sure you realize there's been a lot of discussion over the last few weeks about the fact that we got at least 3 and maybe 6 progressive grassroots candidates. Do you see that as a problem? If not, why not?
This is a good question. I fear for my community.
You
That's the
fear
truth.
for,
My community, for our community.
yes,
That is the truth. APAC is spending $800,000 a week on Melissa Conyers Irvin. Jason Friedman has raised millions, and he will continue to raise millions. Crypto is spending heavily to influence this election and take down Representative Ford. I do wish there could be some sort of consolidation because I don't want to wake up on March 18th and there's the worst case scenario. So I'm not going to say I think it's a problem because I believe in democracy and everybody has a right to ballot access and voters deserve a choice. But I will say for people who are value aligned, who are watching the way that this is playing out, it is scary. We are in an unnecessary war right now, and there is an outside entity that's spending a lot of money. And I do believe that a lot of it has to not only do with this war, but future wars. So I do have a concern about the number of progressive candidates, but I will never ask anybody to step out. I don't believe in that. I believe in proving to voters why I'm the most progressive choice. So the focus of my campaign has not been asking people to step out. It's been saying there is no other campaign that has as many volunteers. There is no other campaign that has as many validators. There is no other progressive campaign that has this many grassroots donors, right? You're not finding other campaigns who are knocking on a voter's door two, three times. And that's not to down any other candidate. That's just to say that I do believe we are running the strongest grassroots campaign in this district and possibly that this district has seen in a very long time. The people who are endorsing this campaign are working. Congresswoman Delia Ramirez endorsed this campaign. I had her out there for hours knocking doors with me. The alder people, alder people, alder persons, sorry, who endorsed this campaign, they're knocking doors. They're working the polls. We work together. That's why I say a coalition. I don't believe in JPEG endorsements. We support one another. We hold one another up. And that's what it means to be in true solidarity. It's not just a transaction. We got to build for the future.
Yeah, it's very impressive, this coalition. If in some ideal world we had ranked choice voting in Illinois, who would you list as your second of those many candidates?
Can I give an asterisk answer?
Yeah, sure.
I think right now I would say Dr. Thomas Fisher, but the asterisk is that I have some questions about 314 Action Fund, who is supporting him.
Mm.
But I really like Dr. Fisher, and if I wasn't him, it would be Keena Collins. I admire her persistence, and I admire the fact that she doesn't quit. Some people see that as a negative. I think, that doesn't mean I don't think I'm a better candidate, but I am saying that I admire the work she's done to push this district to the left, even when it was unpopular.
Yes, that's true. Okay. Let me start with some questions that are just specific to you. What lessons have you learned in your work on the legislative issues for SEIU that you think you can apply to your activities in Congress?
Yeah, I've been a federal lobbyist where I lobbied on behalf of voting rights and HBCUs. For those of you who don't know, HBCUs are historically black colleges and universities. So I've actually been a federal advocate, sorry, where I've worked for a federal lobbying firm. I know my way around Congress. I would not need to find the bathrooms. I've lived in DC for almost 8 years, but in my work at SEIU, that's why I focus so much on everyone else instead of myself as a candidate, because I know that's the real work. No legislator is going to save us. No politician will save us. No politician is going to get us out of the mess that we're in. The people pushing politicians will get us out of the mess we're in. The formula is courage on the inside, cover on the outside, and that's how we've gotten everything done. That has been, monumental legislation going forward. I'll also say that it takes persistence. The fight for 15 took us years. It took us 50 years to pass civilian oversight. That fight started in 1970 '69 when my father was born. And it was passed in 2021. But people didn't give up. They believed that the city of Chicago residents deserve civilians who would be in the driver's seat when it comes to public safety. And so you got to keep at it. You have to keep chipping away at this huge mountain that is in our way. Also, I'll say legislatively, the biggest lesson is I don't fight people outside of Donald Trump. I believe he is a singularly evil president candidate. But my mantra has always been I fight issues, I do not fight people. So if you and I are fighting and I want to raise wages and you want to keep them stagnant, I will fight you like hell. But that doesn't mean the next issue, I'm not going to call you and say, hey, will you stand with me on this issue? Because I'm not looking to deify a particular politician. I'm looking to deliver for the people. And that's something that's very different than being a legislator. As a labor leader, I learned that lesson during COVID when I had to accept help from people who I didn't necessarily like. Aldermen who I thought were racist would call me and say, I know where you can find PPE for your members in the hospitals and the nursing homes. I know where you can find hand sanitizer. And I had no interaction with these people. But in that moment, my political ideology had to come second, third, fourth, and fifth to our members being able to survive when this new virus hits and we are on the front lines. And so from that moment forward, I made a vow that I don't fight people anymore. I just fight issues.
Interesting. Thank
And
you.
that leaves room for us to work together, right? I'll fight you on this issue. I'm going to fight you hard. I'm going to throw my best punch, my best haymaker. However, after this fight is over, maybe the next one we can stand together. I'm open to that.
So obviously the SEIU and your work for them is a completely different animal than the Community Commission for Public Safety.
Yep.
So how would your work with that organization influence your work in Congress? Or
Yeah,
what
I
lessons have
mean,
you learned?
it's so here's one thing we can do right now that will greatly impact public safety. Any candidate, as there are many in this race across the city of Chicago who are telling you, we're going to hire more police. Let me tell you, as a person who oversees the police department, they are lying to you. They are not people, there's not enough people applying to be in CPD. That's not going to solve our problem. But there are things we can do. Number one, language justice. This is something that I've worked very hard on, and we've increased the number of translators within the Chicago Police Department. There were people from Little Village in Chinatown coming to me and saying, my child was murdered, I was robbed, and the police department didn't have a translator. And so it took them 4 days to find somebody to come and interview me. By that time, the case had gone cold, right? If we get language justice, which the federal government can give grants for, that will help with victim services. That not only helps victim services, but it helps to catch violent offenders who are committing these crimes, the small amount of people who are committing these crimes. Number two, civilianization. The LA Police Department has like 28, 30% civilians. Their department is made up of that many civilians. New York is like, I believe it's like 18 or 19%. Chicago, we're at 9%. What that means is when a detective goes out on a crime scene, let's say there's a homicide, right? That detective has to collect the bullets, they have to take the pictures, they have to rope off the area, they have to, do all of this stuff to secure the scene, which takes a long time before they actually go out and do what they were trained to do, which is go and interview a witness, which is go and find the bad guy, right? But if you hire more civilians who can collect the evidence, who can take the photos, who can rope off the scene, we can hire those folks and we can hire them from the community. And now that detective comes to the scene, checks it out, and goes out and does real police work to catch people who are committing violent crimes. These are innovative things that we can do right now. When I did the superintendent search, which was a nationwide search, there was one candidate who I interviewed, and he said, I learned from the pandemic. It was a small town. He said, if I can apply for a police superintendent job, a police chief job on Zoom, then why can't you do police reports on Zoom? And he's right. What does it look like if we had the Chicago Police Department? I just got into a fender bender, and I got on the Allstate app, a State Farm app. I took the picture and it sent it in, and everything was done, right? What does it look like if you don't have to keep going to the police station or calling and waiting on 311? But we had an app that if it's just a small fender bender, you can submit this information, you can submit the other driver stuff, right? And now a police officer doesn't have to come to the scene, or you don't have to go to the police station for something minor. That frees up officers to do more police work. That's the sort of thing that's going to make us safer. That's the sort of thing that gets criminals off the street who are committing violent crime. And it's the sort of things that we can actually do now. Those are things that I would push to fund in Congress, an innovative approach to public safety that we thus far haven't seen. We see the same repeated talking points. On one side, you hear people say, we need more police, right? Okay, well, there was a time we hit over 13,000 and it was the 90s and it was a lot worse numerically, right? And then on the other side, you'll hear people talking about, well, we've gotten our numbers down. I'm proud of that. But that's cold comfort to somebody who's been robbed. That's cold comfort to somebody who has lost a child, right? That doesn't make them feel better that the numbers are going down. So therefore, we need actual solutions that we bring forth that our legislators and our leaders need to think outside of the box. Enough with the old antiquated idea of public safety. We can do this. Other cities have done it. We just need the right leaders in place, the political will.
Have you found resistance in the CPD for this civilization, adding a lot more civilian employees?
No. Well, the union, I mean,
Oh,
as a
yeah,
union
yeah,
guy,
the
nobody wants to
FTO.
see
Yeah,
their bargaining unit cut.
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But
They seem so powerful.
Yeah, the superintendent is somebody who I work closely with. I've had these conversations, and that's what's important. Superintendent Snelling and I will get in a room and argue. We will have it out. And when we leave, we have a plan to help make things better. And we figured out how to work together. Even though we disagree on some things, we find common ground. And that's why you see us trending in a better direction because our government is functioning better. So no, I would say yes. There's pushback. There's pushback from different aldermen who believe that I don't know what I'm talking about and this is a bad idea. There's pushback from people within the police department. There's pushback from the union. But largely, people are supportive of this sort of thinking and this sort of data-driven solutions. I'm not. I have a research team at the community commission. We have a staff of 25, and I have them go around the country. Hey, bring me back what Columbus, Ohio did. Bring me back what Oakland did. Like I want to know what's best practices from around the country. I know Chicago is a unique place, but let's see how everybody else got their numbers down. And it's really hard to argue with data.
Yes. Um, okay, next question. Looking more to the future, how do you see yourself working with the current minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries, given the widespread disappointment and dissatisfaction among the grassroots Democrats with his leadership to date?
Yeah, yeah, I bring the voice of the people. That's what my job is there. I will not rubber stamp Hakeem Jeffries in any way. In fact, I will not agree to vote for that person he's not the speaker, Minority Leader Jeffries,
Yeah. He might be
as
the speaker.
yeah, he's not guaranteed my vote. A vote is to be earned. Politics is a transaction. I am seeking you all support as voters in this district. You should want something from me, and you should want me to be values aligned with you. I want the Speaker of the House, the potential next Speaker of the House, to have that same sort of values. And I also believe that I will come to that person with a list of demands. Hey, if you want my vote, I'm going to be working the rest of the delegation in Illinois and the people of Illinois. If you want support, this is what Illinois needs. Lead pipe removal, right? We need environmental justice. Are you going to commit to universal health care? Are you going to hold the line, right? When we say we're going to hold the line on the government shutdown for healthcare, are you going to mean it? Or are you going to cave, right? Those are all things that will be at the top of my list. Are you going to continue to fund wars or are you going to triple down on diplomacy? Those are things that will be at the top of my list. And so I look forward to working with whoever the next speaker is, if it's Speaker Jeffries. And also, I think it's important to note that being a Congressional Progressive Caucus endorsed candidate would mean that I will come into Congress with 90 or 100 or so friends and allies right away who I would seek to find community with to work on a progressive agenda that could really move our district and the rest of the country forward.
Um, I was going to ask you about which caucuses you would be joining if when you join
Yeah,
Congress.
I definitely joined there's a labor caucus, which, given my background, I think that's
Yes.
right up my alley. Absolutely would join the Progressive Caucus as I'm now one of their endorsed candidates. I would join the Black Caucus. Um, did you mean caucuses or committees?
I'm interested in committees too. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know
committees.
how much of a
I'm
choice you actually have.
I'm fighting hard for universal health care. So Energy and Commerce is the committee that is held. I will want to be involved with the Labor Committee. I'm very interested in passing the PRO Act and banning right to work and making it easier for people to unionize. The union that I formerly worked for, I don't know if I said this on this call, but I stepped down from both of my positions. So I'm no longer, I was executive director until about last August. And I also stepped down as president of the commission because I don't believe in running for a seat while you're in two other powerful seats and using that to influence the selection. I believe that's unethical. So I have stepped down, but I do have a labor background. So I am a person who would seek to join that committee. Energy and commerce is at the top of my list. And I mean, obviously budget and like defense and stuff like that, but I'm not naive. A freshman's not getting on those committees. So I won't even mention those.
Issue of raising money. How are you going to solve that problem once you're a member of Congress? And related question, what kinds of lobbyists would you meet or not meet with, or donors meet or not with, or not?
Okay, you went out for your first question, so I didn't hear you very clearly.
Yeah, go with the first one was just in general, how are you going to raise money once you're a member of Congress? You know, not dial for dollars or whatever, you know.
Oh, from the people. The very similar way to I'm doing it now. I take money from individuals and labor organizations. That's it. That's all. I do not take money from corporations. I don't take money from outside entities. That's the same type of candidate that I would be. A candidate who is running a grassroots campaign, a congressperson who is grassroots funded. I'm not looking to take money from corporations, so it'll be very similar. Although I'm hoping to be able to scale the operation to raise more money, to push for causes that I care about. And you're lobbyists. Um, I I believe in recording all meetings with lobbyists, which is something that I do now. So I would have a policy in my office that if you're coming to talk to me about a particular issue, you should be aware that you are being recorded and my constituents would possibly hear this conversation, because they deserve transparency. You deserve to know who I'm talking to and what I'm talking about. Every single month or quarter, whatever is feasible, I'll release a log of all the lobbyists that I've met with. I want you to know who I'm talking to. And also, I'll tell you where I stand on those issues coming out of that meeting. So I'm the type of person who will talk to everybody, but I also will make sure that I'm transparent and that I will never compromise my values or that of the voters in the district, not just the voters, the residents of the district.
Mhm. Um,
There's no need for any health. I believe in banning healthcare insurance executives and lobbyists to industry from donating to campaigns. So you can come talk to me, and I'm going to ask you, will you help me ban your industry from donating to campaigns? I believe in overturning Citizens United. I don't believe that corporations have free speech and they are individuals. And I think one thing we can do now that doesn't require a constitutional amendment, if you work in the services industry, you can only donate $250 to any congressional campaign. I know that because I have friends of mine who I went to college with who work in that industry who've only been able to give me $250, which then made me think if we did this to the health insurance industry, we'd have Medicare for all tomorrow. Why can't we limit the amount of money that people from certain industries are able to even give to these campaigns so that we can stop having politicians who are bought and paid for and not serving the people?
well, the big industry that you hear about that loves to support their lawyer friends are lawyers, individual lawyers who give lots and lots of money to lawyer members of Congress. So I guess you don't have to worry about that group. Um, your website describes many, many progressive policy positions that you're committed to, and I recommend that if anybody on this call hasn't visited the website to get a good sense of your positions, it's a great place to get to know them. And I think maybe my question here you might have already answered, but I'll just get you to be specific. Which one or two of those do you hope to work on immediately should you be elected? I think you already said the lead pipe.
Yeah, universal health care.
Yeah.
That this is a healthcare election, and we're the only industrialized country in the world that doesn't have a form or version of single payer universal healthcare. So that's at the top of my list, and it's tough to pick two. I will go with gun reform, and that's not only based on my lived experience, but also as a person who's overseen the second largest police department in the country for the last 4 years. Our local leaders will only ever be able to tinker around the margins when it comes to violence in our city. And the reason for it is because we are neighbors with Indiana and Wisconsin. That's the truth. I know the political talking points. I know how to switch into that mode and like talk the politician talk. I just refuse to do it. The truth is, as long as you can go to Indiana and buy loads of ammo and guns and drive them to Chicago, sell them for 4 times the rate in Cook County and Chicago, we're always going to be in trouble. 83% of weapons used in the commission of a crime are legally bought. This isn't some underground market. People are legally buying firearms, transporting them to Chicago, and they're selling them for 4 times the rate, and they report them stolen, and they have no consequences. You have some people who reported weapons stolen 4 or 5 times. Those are not stolen weapons, they're sold weapons. And so I'm very, very, very concerned with that. And I know that the only way we can actually get real public safety and get numbers to a point where people feel safe and not just, me beating people over the head with stats that doesn't really comfort people is if we had our gun laws changed nationwide.
Those are great. Next question. one of our members reported on a conversation he had with you in one of those meet and greets, in which you described yourself as over the years having become, quote, less ideological than you used to be.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm reporting if I got that right. But would you say that that's true? And if so, in what way?
Um, I wouldn't say less ideological. I have my own ideology, but I've started to place that second to delivering for people, right? And that's when I knew I was maturing as a leader. When I can have my own point of view, but I know for a fact that my role here is to deliver for people who need me, and so I'm going to put their needs above what I think, and that is what is something that has changed in me tremendously. Like that, it's a real story about an alderman in the city of Chicago who I previously believed to be racist, and still might be racist. I really don't know, but we clashed all the time. And during that pandemic, he called me twice. I ignored both calls. The third time he called, I answered, and I was heated. Like, hey, why do you keep calling me? What do you want? And he goes, hey, you and I don't always agree, but I know where you can get some N95 mask. I know where you can get some hand sanitizer. And that changed me completely as a leader because the people who I was just working next to in a cubicle were dying or taking a virus home to their elderly parents. We represent childcare providers. The people who go out on the front lines, the doctors, the nurses, the teachers, they have to send their kids to our childcare providers and they are getting sick and the kids are getting sick. And it started, our members bore the brunt of that. And that's when I made the decision to stop fighting people and start fighting issues. Because in that moment, I had to put my ideology aside in the fact that I didn't like this person. And I had to put our membership first, who were depending on me to literally be able to survive. And there's been a number of instances like that, right? The original Fight for 15, we made concessions there, and I hated those concessions. But I also knew there were 400,000 people who would get a raise if we passed this. And here I am, a good job. I have great health care, Cadillac health care. I go to therapy every week. I have paid time off, right? I come from a struggle, but I'm not currently existing in that. So who am I to now say I'm not going to compromise and get 400,000 people a raise because of my own ideology? I can't do that. Those people are depending on me. That's the difference between being an ideologue and a politician and being somebody who's rooted in service. Is that even when you don't completely agree with it, sometimes you gotta hold your nose. You don't compromise your values ever. I'll never compromise my values. But there have been times where who am I to say I'm not going to help 400,000 people get a raise because I have an ideology that it didn't go far enough? And if more people thought that way, I think we'd be in a better place. Our generation, my generation, and the generation under me, like we're very focused on going viral and getting social media attention and getting likes. And for me, my experience is the complete opposite. My experience is people are counting on me. I could care less if I get credit. I could care less if I'm seen as the champion. What I want is the policy. I want the results. If when this campaign is over, I will feel completely empty and hollow if people said he said the most progressive things, right? That doesn't do anything for me or people who are struggling. I want them to say because of the work that they did as a collective, people's lives were changed in a tangible way that you can feel. That's what's important to me.
Um, Eric, are there any questions
Oh,
from the
chat
audience?
questions? Yeah. Hold on. Do. All right. We're coming in hot on this one, Anthony, but I mean, you won't be surprised to see it, but um, hold on. Sorry, give me a second. No candidate will be surprised to see it, but it's got to be asked, and there you are, Marianne.
Actually, how do I see it myself?
Oh, are you not seeing my chat, Marianne?
I see it, but the last thing is where you're asking everybody to start submitting questions.
Uh,
Wait a second.
okay.
Oh, here it is. Here it is. I
Yeah,
see.
yeah.
Let me click
Okay.
on it. Yeah. The question is, what is your position on military aid for Israel?
Yeah, I believe in supporting the Block the Bombs Act. I don't believe that any nation should be able to have a blank check from the American people, especially when there's districts like the seventh that are struggling. I believe that it should be conditional. I believe that Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal. I believe that he was attempting to commit a genocide. I believe that there is no acceptable amount of children who get killed in a war. I know what it feels like to experience gun violence. I know what it feels like to watch my friends die. And I think what happened on October 7th was an absolute travesty. And I think it was disgusting. I believe Hamas is a terrorist organization. And if this was a war where Israel was going after Hamas, you wouldn't hear a lot from me. But the fact that there was that many civilian casualties, and at times I don't even know if I could say just casualties, it's unacceptable. So I would not be a person who gave a blank check to the state of Israel, the government of Israel. And I also think it's important to say this because this doesn't get said a lot. I would hate for people to look at the United States of America and think that Donald Trump is a reflection of me. So I will not condemn the entire state and the people of Israel because there are people who have been protesting their government there as I have been protesting my government here. So I will not do that. I do think that borders anti-Semitism, but I'm very clear on the values that I have, and I will not support sending weapons to Israel or any nation that is inflicting that sort of harm on people. And I think that that's an important distinction. I don't like when people blanketly, call out Israel and they make no distinction between people who live there and people and the government. And sure, I'm sure Benjamin Netanyahu has a lot of supporters there. Obviously, he got elected, as did the guy in the White House here. But I would hate for another nation to say that I support what this person is doing. So that is my answer.
Okay, next audience question. What are your ideas for solving the housing crisis?
Yes, the only thing that solves the housing crisis is building more housing. And there's a number of ways we can do that. Illinois is a donor state. We sent $1.38 to the, sorry, that question, it got me a little emotional. I apologize. We send $1.38 to the United States government, the federal government. We get $1 back. We need to fight as a delegation to bring more of our tax dollars back to the state of Illinois. We will never get to one because we have this big metropolis in the city of Chicago and Cook County. But what does it look like if we get to $1 to $1.10, right? And that extra 28 cents per taxpayer went to the CHA, it went to public housing, it went to give incentives for credit unions, which are ran by a board that's from the community, a community credit union where residents could have say so and build more affordable housing. That's what's important. The other thing that people miss is that if you want people to move into our communities and repopulate the South and the West Sides, you have to make it a community that people want to live in. That means good schools. That means it's not being a food desert. That means it being a clean community, a safe community. And so all of those quality of life issues that surround housing have to be in place, or otherwise you're just building affordable housing at an extremely high rate, and the property values aren't going to match what it costs to build it because the community itself hasn't had the investment that it needs for that to work.
Let's see, anything else? No, I think that question yet. I have another one here. I read your very moving 2024 letter, I think, on the digital news site, The Tribe, that was called An Open Letter to the So-Called Allies Who Live in Safer Chicago Communities.
Yes.
So in this letter, you described, I'm just going to read this because our
You did
listeners
your
will know.
research.
Not the whole thing, just a wee bit. You described the experience, which you've already mentioned here tonight, of very close exposure to police shootings of people in your neighborhood, your classmates, people you knew. And you also write, quote, the people living in Chicago's impoverished communities are beginning to cry out, but you still aren't listening. True allyship is not coaptation. True allyship is asking how I can support you. It's either standing behind or alongside, but not in front. So my question, that's the end of the quote. Do you feel like, since you wrote that, which I know is less than 2 years, any progress has been made toward true allyship?
Yes, and I'll tell you what that was born out of. That was born after the shot spotter uh, debate, and
Mhm.
I never took a public stance for or against. What I said was I held a hearing at St. Sabina Church on the issue of ShotSpotter. And there were a lot of folks who came to that hearing who were from communities that don't have shootings or ShotSpotter. It's about 30%. The other 70% were people who were saying, I've lost my brother to gun violence. I've lost my mom to gun violence. I've been, this has happened. This technology helped to get a first responder there quicker, right? I didn't put my hand on the scale, my thumb on the scale either way. But what I saw was people saying, you all are supporting surveillance. And they were yelling at people who had literally lost loved ones to gun violence. There was a Latina woman who I vividly remember crying because she was trying to explain that this technology helped her brother get into an ambulance. Even though he still passed away, it helped him to get a 911 response quicker. And I was trying to say you can't invalidate the feelings of people who are suffering day to day. We might have some more work to do to bring those folks along with us, but don't invalidate their experience. Allyship is not in front of me, it's standing next to me. I don't live downtown. So what I would ask you is how can I help? How can I serve? Tell me about your community. I want to help you. I don't want to lead your struggle or your fight. I want to be a friend to you. And oftentimes now what we see is people who have the belief that, like, hey, I don't know what it's like to be a woman. I don't know what it's like to be a queer person or to be trans or to be any of these other things. However, I've centered myself and made myself an expert on these issues. And I think that does a true disservice, and the Democratic Party is suffering from that. So, do I think progress has been made? Absolutely. I've met some of the best people over the last couple of years. But that letter was not to blanketly call out everyone. It was to talk to a very specific demographic that was that I do believe was co-opting other people's pain and struggles and telling them what's best for them, which I don't think is helpful. So I hope that was
Oh,
a
on that particular issue. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It wasn't a blanket issue at all. Um, as a heterosexual cisgender person, right? I believe it would be wrong of me to try to pretend that I'm an expert on women's rights. I'm not. I will never know what that feels like. But I can help. I can be an ally. I can serve alongside. I can, help however I can, but I can't be the center because I don't know what that feels like. And so that's all I was trying to say.
Thank you. I see another question from the audience here. This is the one about police oversight. What do you think about a fund for compensating victims of crimes to lessen the burden of having been a victim? For example, when someone is robbed violently, we can consider compensating medical bills. So that's the first question. I'll let you go
One,
with that. The
one,
next
one
one.
billion percent supported. There is a fund that exists. It is woefully inadequate and underfunded, and it takes too many layers and paperwork to get through it. But 100%, absolutely, fully funded. Make sure that people get the services that they need. I was robbed in January 8th, 2023, and it made the front page of the Tribune. And I'm a pretty connected person when it comes to like power structures. I had no idea how to operate this legal system. I didn't know what my rights were. I didn't know how to like follow up with a detective. And so which is something that I've pushed for, having victim service advocates who can say, hey, here's some mental health help. Here's some victim services. Like here's somebody you can call. Here's how you work with the state's attorney. We need to also have people there who are able to hold people's hand and navigate this strange bureaucracy as you're also trying to come out of a very traumatic moment. And those are the people who I think should be able to make an assessment and direct people to funding that can help them get back on their feet. So yes, a billion percent support that.
The second question is sort of related to something you already mentioned, but the question is, have you pushed any concrete initiatives to get more mental health professionals doing the work the police should not be doing?
Yes, yes, yes. Treatment, not trauma. I'm getting in the weeds here, and this is like inside baseball. But yes, the first budget that treatment, not trauma got in during Mayor Lightfoot's tenure, they were short 2 votes. I went out and got those votes. It's an alderman named Andre Vasquez who was a no vote, and he's a friend of mine. He's endorsed the campaign, and I called him and I'm like, look, she has the votes to pass the budget, but we need to get treatment, not trauma, to pilot. Back then, it was just a pilot into the
Mhm.
budget, and he took a lot of heat for that. And so, also kudos to you all for getting me to share a story that nobody's ever heard. But I was able to. That's another example of like, hey, I don't think this is a great budget, but we need to get this pilot in the budget, and she has the votes anyway, so it's going to pass no matter what. Will you trade your vote and you're going to get some heat, but we'll get treatment out trauma in the budget, and then next year we'll try to get some more funding behind it and we'll build on that success. So yes,
Great story.
Andre's going to
Um,
kill me.
there's not so many people watching here, but next question. With 2 weeks left, can you give your assessment of the current state of play in this race? Do you have any internal polling that you're willing to share?
um, I have polling from like December 29th, and we were in striking distance. Our polling showed that when voters hear about my message as a labor leader, that I've helped win the fight for 15, win paid leave for all, that I shoot to first place. Since then, we have made over 130,000 phone calls. We have knocked on over 40,000 doors. We have over 500 volunteers, and we have been relentlessly. My hoodie is still wet from canvassing in the rain today. And it's a true operation that we are running, and I believe our message is getting out loud and clear. My state of the race, it's hard to punch through right now. How do you compete with 850K on TV, digital, and mail? Melissa's on her probably 18th mailer. I think I have five. Freeman's probably right there with her, right? Representative Ford has been in office for 20 years. The last time that he had a competitive primary or any opponent, I was 13 years old. That's the type of entrenched politics we're up against. It takes a large amount of people power to beat something like that. I believe we are the only campaign that has that right now. There are a lot of great candidates. There are people who have great values and a great vision, but I don't think the infrastructure there is there to match. If you check out different, candidate social media, you see a lot of direct to camera DTC videos where I'm standing in front of the camera and I'm pontificating about how great I am and about the values that I hold. When you look at my social media, you see a coalition of hundreds of people door knocking every part of the district, representing different faiths, different races. It's a coalition. So that's my state of play. Dark money is all up and through this race. APAC has funded both Freeman and Melissa Conyers Irvin. Crypto has come in heavy to kind of beat up on Representative Ford. But to me, he also represents entrenched politics. Even though he's gotten the anointing of Congressman Davis, uh, they've learned our language. We should be honest about that, right? You'll hear people like Representative Ford say, "I'm going to abolish ICE." Well, why'd you take an FOP endorsement then? Because those two things are one and the same. And Gregory Bovino and John Canizaro are kind of the same person. And so that's my assessment of it. I'm very concerned about the progressive vote being split. I'm sure if my campaign is watching this, they're going to be upset that I'm talking about this openly, but I am very concerned about it. And I'll tell you, if my polling came back in December that we didn't have a shot, I would have packed it up and supported Keena. I think when you look at the way things have played out, I will make the argument that objectively, I believe we are the only campaign that can win this on the progressive side. And I think that's by all metrics, whether it's fundraising, whether it's having an independent expenditure that's supporting the campaign, volunteers, digital ads, mail. We're trying to communicate to over 100,000 voters. There's 750,000 people in this district. Having great ideas is not going to reach someone's home in Inglewood. It'll reach the voter who has the time to research every candidate. But what about the large amount of people, the majority of people who are going to make up their minds at the polls, or who are going to, only be able to get a piece of mail or a digital ad? Right now, all they're saying is, Melissa's a fighter, Melissa's a fighter, Melissa's a fighter. You see it on the treadmill, you see it on TV, everywhere you go, you see it because there's that much money in this race. A lot of folks have no clue who's paying for those ads.
I see another question. Many historians and sociologists argue that America operates under a race-based caste system designed to pit working class people against one another to the benefit of an elite few. If elected, How will you build multiracial solidarity among the 7th District working class? Specifically, do you believe that delivering universal material gains, like healthcare and housing, is the most effective way to dismantle the us versus them rhetoric that's fueling the regime's mass deportations and other hate-based policies meant to extract wealth and demean working people? That was a
Okay,
long
so I'm going to read that question was just thankfully pasted. That was a long question,
one.
and I'm going to
Yeah, no
try to break it
problem.
apart and answer it. Building multiracial solidarity. How will you build multiracial solidarity amongst seven district working class? You organize. That's what this is all about. It's the same way I've been able to have a campaign that has support from across the district from different elected leaders. It's because you put them first. You center the people who are the impacted. My favorite thing to say in this campaign is that the people who have been closest to the pain should now be closer to the power, right? I have experienced pain. Struggle is what unites all of us. So I might not know what it means to struggle under apartheid systems, right? I might not know what it means to struggle as a woman. I might not know what it means to struggle as a queer person, but I know what it means to struggle as a black man, right? I know what it means to struggle as a person who has not had has lived in a community that's plagued by gun violence. So our struggles are different. We should not erase one another. We should embrace the fact that we have different struggles. But the fact that we struggle is what unites us. And that's what we should be talking about. We should be uplifting the fact that we all have struggled and that we're all in this together. I think that's what's important. I am also, as you may have guessed, a strong proponent of labor unions, right? Right now, and they're not perfect. Labor unions have their issues, so I want to acknowledge that too. Right now, we're trying to organize 100,000 rideshare drivers, the gig economy. Those are people of all different faith, colors, creeds, right? But they're all struggling under the thumb of these rideshare companies, which are taking most of their wages. Most of the folks who are rideshare drivers are part-time drivers who work for different industries. That right there is one thing that we can do, helping them to organize into a union where they can then use their collective power to use the vehicle that is a union to push for positive change, not only for dignity in the workplace, but dignity in the communities that they go home to. So that's how I will work to build multiracial solidarity in the seventh district. Specifically, do you believe that delivering universal material gains like healthcare and housing is the most effective way to dismantle the us versus them system? I think the jury's still out on that. I'm not 100% sure. I do think that's a way to directly impact people's lives, but I'll give you an example. I talk about this a lot. Some communities are drowning. The Democrats love to say a rising tide lifts all boats. Well, if a community has been drowning, a rising tide just pushes them further under the water. And so when you hear me talk about Medicare for all, you hear me talk about the black maternal health crisis. That's one demographic of people, black women, who are dying at 3 times the rate during childbirth. We need Medicare for all, and we need specific legislation in Medicare for all that ensures that we're researching and figuring out why this is happening. Do we have culturally competent doctors? Do we have medical curriculums at the different universities across this country that specifically are studying this issue and figuring it out? Right? We have to be specific, and there's nothing wrong with that. We can have a for all plan, but also recognize that certain communities are bearing the burden or the brunt of this. And so that's my answer there. And rhetoric that is refueling the regime's mass deportation and hate-based policies. The most effective way to dismantle the us versus them rhetoric that is fueling the regime's mass deportation and hate-based policies. I'm not really sure about that last part on how to answer it, or if it's a question or just a comment. Um, but I think the way that we stop the regime's mass deportation and hate-based policies is to prosecute them, is to hold them accountable. And I'm not a person who typically pushes for punitive measures, but I am clear. Gregory Bovino deserves to be in prison. Kristi Noem deserves to be impeached, right? I know right now if I get out and go and get in my vehicle and drive drunk, that I'm going to likely be pulled over and be arrested. If I hit someone, I'll be held accountable. If I do something that breaks the law, they will hold me accountable. That's a social contract that I've signed as a citizen, that I know these are the laws in which I will abide by. How do you then convince somebody like me or anybody that any of these laws mean anything if you can blatantly see officers in mass like killing people, disrespecting people, not identifying themselves, operating as a local army of the president? it makes it hard to believe in anything when the things that we've grown up believing are being destroyed right in front of our face. Supreme Court and these lifetime appointments where you're supposed to believe in this system of laws and rules, President Trump could give a damn about that. And so, in order to fix the system, you got to completely rebuild this part, and that starts with accountability. So you'll hear me say, yes, I don't want to reform ICE. I don't want to just defund ICE. I do want to abolish ICE and prosecute these officers, prosecute the people who have committed these crimes so that we can restore some semblance of accountability in this system.
Um, well, I have another question, just kind of one of my personal little bugaboos here. You went to Howard University, great university. You must have been exposed to a lot of new ideas there, like all college students experience. In addition, so my question is, what we ask musicians and artists, who are your influences? Writers, thinkers, historians, political leaders? Who do you look to for guidance and inspiration?
All right, I won't say my parents. My grandparents actually are my biggest inspiration. My grandfather's a 30-year retired plumber with the City of Chicago Water Department. My grandmother is a retired bus attendant. She worked with special needs students. They are my biggest inspiration. But people who are more famous and known, Harold Washington. I'm like, I've always been in awe of what he was able to accomplish and do at a time where it wasn't really popular. He built a black and brown coalition with the likes of people like Chuy Garcia at a time where nobody was talking about that. I will also say a 25-year younger Danny Davis. In the 90s, Danny Davis ran on marijuana legalization. In the 90s, he ran on being able to have a second chance in expunging records. This was groundbreaking stuff at a time when this was not very popular. No one was talking about returning citizens or reentry, and that, if you've done your time, you should not only be able to vote, but be able to find a way to fit into our society again. So I would say a Danny Davis of 25 years ago. And did I say Ta-Nehisi Coates, the author? He's somebody who inspires me. He inspires me a lot as well. Yeah, I think those are the
Yeah,
people
that's
who I
great.
would
That's
really.
great to hear.
If I had to name one more person, it's the president of Howard as well. He's a person who came here as an immigrant at 17. He had a medical degree at 23. He has sickle cell anemia. He's a top 100 surgeon and the president of a university. I mean, this guy has literally like done so much. He was the president of the National American Cancer Society. So to see what he's been able to do as a person who suffers with a grave illness and has led that institution, I do look up to him.
Great. Helpful. Um, Another question from our list. You were a lead strategist in the fight to raise Chicago's minimum wage to $15.
Yes,
Looking back, what was the single toughest room you had to walk into during those negotiations? Was it city council skeptics or small business owners?
it was Mayor Lightfoot. Um, we weren't just trying to raise the minimum wage to 15. We were trying to do some other things that really helped workers. And I'm not going to say she was against it, but she was very clear that this is going to be her first big legislative win, and everything needed to like fit around that. And so it wasn't very easy to work with her team. Small business owners at that point had kind of saw the writing on the wall. The coalition was so big, and people were calling for this, that I think they knew that this was the way that not only the country was going, but that Chicago was going to go, and the state. But that was probably the toughest room, was going into those negotiations with a new mayor who is very popular, who won every ward in the city and feels like they have a mandate. And I'm not anti-mayor Lightfoot or any mayor. Again, I fight issues and not people. But I think those are very, very tough, intense negotiations because we're coming off of having, you know, all powerful mayors. Daley was all powerful. Rahm was all powerful. And here you have a new mayor who won every single ward in a landslide. So those were tough.
Do I see another one here? Um, Oh, here's somebody had the question. We already talked about this possibility of a split vote between candidates. Do you see yourself, if nobody gets, see yourself as actually becoming an independent, running as an independent, if it came to that
Who won?
I
in
think,
the
hold
general
on.
election?
Hold on. But you should add the context. Sorry. You just add the context that if it were, let's say one of the much more centrist candidates, right? Not
Yeah.
necessarily a
Yes.
progressive that you would
Yes,
support. Sorry.
exactly. Thank you, Eric.
Um, I think it would definitely. I haven't given this any thought, and I don't. I'm not a like a shoot from the hip or like come off the top. I'm a very calculated, thoughtful person. So I don't know the answer to that. Yeah, I don't. I don't know the
It's
answer.
okay.
I'd have to think about that. I if that's what the people wanted me to do, I would consider it. But it would take the people. It wouldn't be something that it wouldn't be a decision I made in a vacuum. It would be a decision I made in community, and I would have to put some guardrails in place to make sure that's not an ego-driven thing, and that we actually have a shot at delivering for people. Because the worst thing you can do is get people's hopes up and know that you can't really deliver. It's very hard to run as an independent. You need like 25,000 signatures to even get on the ballot.
Right. Let me ask a question about the scary things that are coming with tech, especially that affects labor. Is SEIU preparing for the automation of service jobs, and what federal safety net do we think that could protect those
Yes, we have a
jobs?
whole working group, a whole committee at our international union. I believe it's called the Committee on the Future, and they meet I think like once a month. And they are that's what this is all about. What does work look like going into the future? How do you protect workers? What does collective bargaining look like going forward? So yes, our union is deeply invested in figuring out what that looks like. I mean, right now we're fighting to organize rideshare drivers, and simultaneously Waymo has introduced legislation that in Springfield that would put a pilot in place for autonomous vehicles. And so we could very well organize these workers and bring them into a union, and their jobs will be gone immediately because there's now autonomous vehicles that are on our streets. And so we push to make sure that we regulate that things are done in a safe and smart way. I really need the second part of that question again.
Um, let's see. Oh, second part. Basically, would you imagine having any kind of federal safety net to to help these workers whose jobs do disappear?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe in a just transition, not only for environmental jobs but any job that's lost to automation. We need a just transition. Those folks need to be given training and offers to work in different industries that they can also fill those positions. So yes, without a question, the federal government and our state legislature should be ensuring that people who are impacted by this have a chance to move into a different industry and have upward mobility and have some safety. I believe in a federal jobs guarantee, which is I'm good with universal basic income. I'm a proponent of universal basic income, but I also believe in a federal jobs guarantee. And a federal jobs guarantee that says anybody who wants a job will be able, the federal government will ensure that you have a job, and a job that pays at least $20 to $25 an hour, universal basic health care, and the ability to thrive. I think that is the job of the federal government. I'm a traveler. I love to travel. I could not believe what I saw when I went to Switzerland. I went to Zurich. They don't have any poverty. They are a very wealthy country, obviously very different. But for the price of one United States aircraft carrier, every single student that's in college right now can go to school for free, and we have 19 of them. The next country in line with aircraft carriers is China, I think with like nine. Is there anybody who believes that if we go from 19 to 18, that we're going to be much less safe? And I say that as a person who supports our troops, but yeah, every person has a right to thrive. And it's our job. I believe that the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice. And I believe that it's each and every one of our job to bend it just a little bit faster. Run our leg of the race.
Well, I'm thinking about the under the neoliberal regime of Clinton, all those new alternative jobs were promised. We should help people go to nursing school when they lose their jobs in factories in the Midwest, or we should send them to, I don't know, chef school or something. And none of that worked out at all
Yep.
for those people. Or the promises were not kept, or they suggested they take up new occupations they didn't want. So the idea of a minimum federal guarantee of a federal job is at least far beyond we'll pay for you to go to community college even if you don't want to. So here's a question about the CCPSA. Having been that first leader of the community commission, what would you say was the most surprising, unexpected administrative hurdle you found in starting an entire new
Indivisible downtown? You all are getting me to open up in this campaign in a way that I have not with anybody else. So I came into this position and Mayor Lightfoot was not happy. She took credit for passing this ordinance and she hated it. She didn't believe in it. In fact, she introduced an alternative ordinance to undercut us, and we beat her. We won. And therefore, she couldn't, the ordinance was passed with a supermajority of the city council, so she could not veto it. But what she did do was stop us from doing any hiring. For the first year, we had one employee, an executive director.
I remember
And
that.
so I wrote the press releases. My vice president, Ramel Terry, designed the graphics. We booked the rooms ourselves. It was literally me, my vice president, and our executive director, Adam Gross. And we had in the budget, we had a research department, we had a comms team, we had budget money for a comms team. We had like 27 staff persons budgeted. But the way she controlled it was to say, Department of Human Resources, don't let this city agency hire anybody. And they probably won't admit this, but that's what happened. I would ask my executive director's name is Adam, hey, where are we on hiring? It's been a year now. Like, when are we going to get a comms person who can help put out press releases and has an actual press list? And it was, I think what they were trying to do was kill this idea. And so I get $1,000 a month to do a job that takes me 60 hours a week, with no staff. And I refuse to let that happen. So I would I would write the press releases. I would, get somebody to design the graphics. I would do all of the outreach, go out and flyer neighborhoods and put things on social media. We did it all ourselves for that first year. And then finally, when it was election season, she kind of loosened the reins a little bit and we were allowed to hire people. But that was so daunting and scary because here's this new thing that everybody in the community has hope in and believes that this can be something. It took 50 years and 170,000 people to help pass this. They're counting on us to deliver. And so here I am, the first president. How do I go and explain, hey, actually, I don't have any staff. Actually, I don't have a budget for meeting spaces. Actually, I'm about to fail. It's just too much to explain to the public. They weren't going to want to hear that. And so I had to roll up my sleeves and build it from the ground up. And thankfully, we survived that first year and 4 superintendents. And now we
Yeah.
have a full staff. But that early first year, you wouldn't believe how difficult. I mean, they would not give us a city email. I would say to them, the public has a right to FOIA my communication. I don't have a city email. You're forcing me to use a civilian email. And in order for somebody to FOIA me, I have to turn over all like emails from my mom, my private employer. They wouldn't even give us a city of Chicago email at first. They wouldn't give us city IDs to access city buildings. I didn't have a printer. I didn't have office space. Now we have a full floor, but back then we had nothing.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
I
I
would
see we
I
have a
would be
raise.
meeting I would be reviewing sensitive information in coffee shops.
Oh gosh,
That's crazy. Yeah, I was gonna say, Marianne, we've got somebody with their hand raised.
Dorothea, can she be unmuted? Are you unmuted?
I am unmuted. Hi,
Great.
Anthony.
Hi.
I appreciate your realistic. I describe you as a realist in the political arena, which I think is a compliment. But I want
Thank
to
you.
ask I've not heard any of the other candidates talk about how the Illinois representatives work together and how you think about the rest of Illinois outside Chicago. Like the farmers can't sell their soybeans to China anymore and stuff like that, that you're going to have to. Do they work together? Does the delegation work together? And what do you think about, the
That's
rest of Illinois?
Yes, and you are hitting it on the head. That's what's important. So I, being a federal advocate before and coming from a background as a lobbyist and organizer, you'll see the state of California congressional delegation, the Democrats move as a block, or New York. You see it sometimes with the state of Illinois, but not most times. It's very individualistic, and that's something that we have to fix. And I believe that all 14, there's 17 congressional seats in the state of Illinois. 14 of them are Democrats. They need to be caucusing together and moving as a block and coming up with an agenda. So my ideal world would see all 14 of the Illinois delegation have a retreat, get in there, have it out, fight, come together. But when you leave that room, we got these three, four items. This is the focus of the delegation for this year. Now, I may want to go and say, I'm going to champion this issue. You may want to champion that issue. But as a delegation, here are the four things, and we will not deviate. We're going to have the same talking points. When we leave this room, we're going to send a letter to the president, to the Speaker of the House, to the Senate, that chamber, and then we're going to inform our constituents. We're going to have town halls on this issue. You come to my town hall, I go to yours. We cross pollinate. We work together on these four issues. That doesn't stop me from working on other issues that I care about, but these are the three or four that we have agreed as a state. These are our priorities for this year. And if something is important and it didn't make the cut this year, then we'll give it a go next year. But we have to start moving more as a block. And I think that's something that's really important because there are going to be blind spots. Here's a good example. I am leading work at this community commission, and we're talking about how to fix traffic stops in the city of Chicago. I'm not a disabled person, and that was a blind spot for me. So I was of the impression that if you have one tail light out on your vehicle, the police shouldn't be able to just pull you over in the daylight hours for that, right? Then somebody who represents the disability community came to me and said, "Hey, for the visually impaired, that vehicle looks like a motorcycle, a two wheel vehicle, not a four, and this harms our community, right?" I say that to say my heart was in the right place, but I was wrong, and I didn't see the full picture. There are going to be issues, as you just mentioned, soybeans, that are going to be a blind spot for me that I have to rely on my colleagues in the community to help inform me of, because what impacts them impacts us. Those are the same, that's the food that's going to be on our table. We need the rest of the state of Illinois to thrive, just like we do Chicago and the western suburbs. Illinois 7 has the economic engine for the state of Illinois within it. And so there's a certain responsibility that comes with that, that we should feel responsible also for the rest of the state.
Yeah. First, I've had any of our candidates talk about the rest of the state, I think.
It's important.
Yeah. Well, even as Indivisible, we're trying to learn to work with Illinois Indivisible, not just our little Chicago groups, you know. Another question about police accountability and the budget. You successfully secured funds to be redirected to marginalized communities. What was that money moved from the police budget directly, or did you find it somewhere else in the municipal budget?
If that's from my bio, that's talking about my time as a federal advocate, that's what that piece is
Right,
from.
right.
But also, I mean, treatment not trauma is a good example of that.
Yes.
Universal basic income is something that I've lobbied for that put funds directly into the hands of marginalized people. I've supported civilianization of the Chicago Police Department. I've supported a number of different things that reduce police spending, but increase public safety spending and things that make people safer. And I've there's been times where I've disagreed with my progressive friends. One example of that is that I pushed to increase a small part of the Chicago Police Department budget, but I wasn't pushing for punitive measures. I was pushing for translators and trying to explain to my progressive friends that as a leader, people are coming to me and saying they want their cases solved, but there's not enough translators. I love you all. However, I need some money to get translators, and that's going to slightly increase the police department budget. However, I'm not contributing to a carceral system. I'm trying to help victims of violent crime get the help that they need and deserve. So there's even been times where I've had to sit in that tension of what does this look like to invest in people and make sure that they have the services they need, but it also has the appearance of you're pushing for more funding for a carceral system, even though I believe that's not what I was doing.
Hey, Marianne.
Yes.
Thank you, Anthony, for that answer. We do have a couple questions. I'm not sure
Let me
if
see if
people
I
are
can.
messaging you questions, but I've been
Oh, I
getting
see
some,
one.
so I just want
Yes.
to, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the heads up. Um, the audience asks, a member asks, are you willing to work for immigration reform? If so, what would immigration reform look like if you wrote legislation?
Yeah,
Is it
it looks like a pathway to citizenship. It looks like amnesty. It looks like expedited path to citizenship. I should be clear about that because people say that, and I'm like, the plan you're talking about would take a decade. That's not okay. Expedited pathways to citizenship, multiple pathways to citizenship. It looks like amnesty for people who are here and don't have a criminal record and are just trying to earn a living. It looks like dignity. It looks like caring for one another. I represent. I won't say that because I pushed them at risk. Sorry.
Marianne, I think your mic is, should,
oh,
yeah,
you
there
cover
you go.
that? Yeah, there we go. I'm just making sure. Or any other hands raised? No. Um, uh, so all of us here know that Chicago, that the Department of Justice has promulgated a consent decree for the police department. So if you go to Congress, all of a sudden you'll have some more oversight over the Department of Justice. Would you use that oversight function in any way to make sure that consent decree gets or speed it
So
up?
I hate to be the policy wonk here, but
That's okay.
we are not in the Department of Justice administer consent decree. President Trump, during his first term, killed that.
Oh, right,
The state of
right.
Illinois,
Actually,
Attorney General Kwame Raoul, we are in a consent decree with the state of Illinois administered through the Attorney General's office and the Chicago Police Department. And I have made it a goal of our commission every year to increase compliance with the consent decree. We have seen it be expedited, but also the problem with the consent decree is that a lot of it requires funding. And it's not, so again, we got to sit in that tension. The consent decree requires hundreds of positions to be funded, victim services, right? Civilianization. That requires increasing the police budget because the consent decree says you have to hire these positions. And so we got to figure out how to come into full compliance as quickly as possible. Some of those mandates have to be funded. And so I've made it a goal every year to push for more consent decree compliance within the Chicago Police Department. I also made sure that every single superintendent that made it to superintendent candidate that made it to the final round had to give a concrete plan for how they would increase consent decree compliance.
can you share a couple of those things you worked on the last couple of years, the compliance successes you got or something? Might
Commission
call them.
compliance or just
Yeah,
at the commission,
at the commission.
I've made all police misconduct files public, which is monumental for the city of Chicago. But not only did we make it public, we made it searchable by name. So no longer do you have to FOIA and jump through hoops to figure out what a person's background is. So it's all CPD misconduct files are public and searchable by name. I eliminated a gang database which targeted 130,000 people. That was the first thing I did as president.
I remember that.
130,000 people, 10 of them over the age of 116, the youngest being 7 years old, 90% of the people on that list being black and brown males. And that list was mostly used by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And so I was very proud to eliminate that database during the first couple months of being president of that commission. And it did that before ICE came and started terrorizing our communities and at the rate that they are. Because if we hadn't got rid of that database, it would have been much more chaos and destruction. So very proud of that. Very proud of the superintendent search that we led to have a superintendent that has to now be held accountable to the people and not just a mayor. I'm very proud of the work that we redefined what it means to be an extremist. So CPD is antiquated. They used to have a rule on the books that said if you are a member of the Ku Klux Klan, the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, you will be disciplined. Well, these extremist groups are nimble. They're smart. So what they do, they're the Proud Boys today. They shut down, reconstitute, and they are the Sad Boys tomorrow. Same hateful ideology with a new name. But now your name is not on that list, so you're good to go. So what we did was say we're no longer going to use a static list. We're going to focus on behaviors. So if your organization meets this criteria, right? You can take this criteria that we've laid out, compare it to the organization that you joined, and if it matches, we will hold you accountable. And we will now add that new organization to the list. But relying on a static list in a time where these organizations pop up overnight, right? Hundreds of them across the country. It's important that we don't use some static list and we're chasing our tails over and over to keep up with all these different extremist groups that are popping up that are coming out of MAGA land, but rather the behavior. If you match this behavior, you will be disciplined and terminated from the Chicago Police Department. Those are some of the wins that I've been able to deliver on the public safety front, pushing for language justice, as I mentioned,
Yeah.
which is more translators, more translation devices. I'm pretty proud. We have a long way to go. And talking about public safety is not easy because people will say, I don't feel the impact. And they are right. I'm with them 100%. But I do believe that we have been able to move the needle in a positive direction for a commission that's only been around for almost 4 years, not even a full four.
Great. Well, thank you for that. I think we're about ready to wind up, but I'm going to have just two little fun questions. Do you have any favorite music or media that's kept you going during this race?
Music or media? Huh. I would say either jazz or gospel. I find myself questioning
Favorite?
things a lot. Jazz is how I wind down. I'm going to get off this call and pour a glass of wine, listen to some jazz. This campaign has uprooted my life a little bit. I have a dog. My dog is living with my dad while I'm campaigning because I can't adequately take care of him. And so the things that typically keep me grounded are not here. So I would say jazz or gospel music.
Do you have and last question, do you have a favorite restaurant, bar, or place where you chill?
Whew. I'll give a couple. If I want some good hot wings, I'm going to Jake Melnick's. If I want pizza, I'm going to Home Run Inn. And there's a restaurant in the district in Maywood called Ruby's. If I want some good soul food, I'm going to go there.
Ruby's?
Yeah, it's called Ruby's.
Okay.
But yeah, I like to move around. I don't like to frequent just one particular place.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and giving such great reflective answers.
Thank you. I
Well thought out.
appreciate
Really
you
appreciate
all.
it.
This has been an amazing conversation. You have asked the most thought provoking questions I have been asked. I'm gonna have to call Andre Vasquez and apologize for telling our secret stories and um, but thank you all. This was a really good conversation. I'm very grateful for it, and um, I would love to earn your support. But even if I don't, I would love to build with you all in the future.
Thank you so much. We're looking forward to that too.
Thank you all. I'm gonna
Good night, everybody.
have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Marianne. Great job.
Yep. Yep. Thanks, guys, for
Alrighty.
showing up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the great questions, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording. Okay. And I'm going to stop this live stream to YouTube.